Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
I am Luffy, Partner System Online, One Piece, by Veltoria. Died in sleep, reborn as a child Luffy. No crew, no powers, just pain and a grindy system. To grow stronger, he must level up others. Each powered-up partner unlocks anime abilities. Fairy tale magic, soul blades, one-hit swords. With friendship, Hellgarp training, and a game UI, he's grinding his way to Pirate King in a darker One Piece world. Adios. Bittersweet.
Luffy lay sprawled across a large deck chair, wearing nothing but a pair of sky blue boxers. His streamlined muscles and six-pack abs glistened in the sunlight as he basked in the warmth, sipping iced lemonade and gently swaying with the ship. 2 months had passed since they'd left Apposite Island, sailing across the calm seas. Without the threat of storms, life on the ocean had become so relaxing that Luffy was beginning to question if he ever wanted to set foot on land again. Robin, however, didn't share the sentiment. For the past 2 months, she'd been cooking and doing laundry, tasks completely unbecoming of her usual cunning and dark allure. The once formidable queen of manipulation was starting to feel more like a housewife. As she sliced vegetables in the ship's galley, she actually found herself missing the twisted scheming of her old life. Brr, 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 brr. A den mushi began ringing. Robin quickly wiped her hands and took off her apron, asking Luffy to answer the phone. Yeah, maybe in the next life. But as she approached the den mushi, her steps froze. There were 3 den mushi aboard the ship. One was used to contact Godia, the girl from Apposite Island. Another was reserved for Trebol. The last one, the most dangerous, was linked to none other than the warlord of the sea, Don Quixote Doflamingo. Robin didn't answer it. Instead, she brought the creature straight to Luffy, who was still lounging under the sun. What's the meaning of this? The den mushi grumbled in a low, threatening voice behind pink-tinted glasses. Luffy grinned, unfazed, and replied cheerfully, ha ha ha. Well, if it isn't Lord Doffy himself. What brings you to call little ol' me? On the other end, Doflamingo's expression darkened. He didn't bother hiding the rage in his voice. Don't get clever with me. This sea doesn't run by the rules of nobodies like you. Ha ha ha, don't be like that, Luffy said with a sudden seriousness. He sat up, resting his elbows on his knees, staring out at the horizon. Nobody, huh? He stood, his tone dropping, deeper and more ominous. Doffy, I'd advise you not to underestimate the power of nobodies. Chasing dragons for too long wears you out. Sometimes, it's the ant that trips the giant. He turned his gaze back to the sea. As for Apposite Island, don't worry about it. The place will be yours within 5 years. I won't be returning to the auction house. For a long time, there was silence on Doflamingo's end. Whether he was fuming or pondering Luffy's words, it was impossible to tell. But Luffy didn't care what he thought. I'm sure you feel it too, the sea is on the verge of a new calm. The red hair pirates have entered the new world like emperors, shattering the delicate balance of power. You think someone like you, a so-called nobody, will still have the chance to rule in that peace. You're not seriously planning to rot in your corner of the world as some second-rate king, are you? The title, Warlord of the Sea, sure sounds impressive, but in the end, it's still just a warlord under the sea. Luffy's voice swelled with intensity before lowering to a biting tone. The way he emphasized the word under sent chills through the air. His sneer stretched across his face like he was mocking the world itself. Robin, watching from the side, found herself shivering, not from the breeze, but from a creeping realization. For a moment, she truly believed that the entire world was no bigger than this one man. Even Doflamingo, far away in the royal palace of Dressrosa, felt a cold sweat form on his brow. For the first time, the great manipulator himself felt like he was being played. After a pause, Doflamingo took a slow breath and asked in a cold voice, so, what exactly are you planning? Luffy gave a sly smirk. What's this? The mighty warlord of the sea asking me for advice. Enough games, Doflamingo growled. I suggest you stop pushing your luck. Hey, the wind tousled Luffy's hair as he squinted at the sun behind his shades. planning, not really. But if peace leaves no room for change, then maybe it's time to break the peace. What do you mean by that? You'll find out soon enough, Luffy said with a cryptic smile, then casually hung up. The Den Den Mushi's eyes drooped as it fell into sleep mode. Robin was still frozen, trying to process what had just happened. She had no idea what world-shaking event this man was planning next. After all, last year's Celestial Dragon Assault incident had already thrown the world into chaos. But then Luffy turned to her with a mischievous grin. So, how was it? That performance was pretty great, right? What? Robin blinked, stunned by the sudden shift. Luffy burst into laughter. I mean just now. I nailed it, didn't I? I think I totally sold it. Luffy totally bought it, too. We'll be able to move freely now. Only an idiot would stick around guarding his business. This is the ocean. Freedom is the most important thing. He flung his arms open and leaned back, perfectly landing in his chair again. Without missing a beat, he reached for his unfinished lemonade and took a long sip through the straw. It was as if the serious, threatening man from moments ago had vanished. Robin took a deep breath, clearly trying to suppress something, then asked calmly, "So, everything you just said was an act?" Luffy, still sipping, replied, "Of course not. Luffy isn't that stupid. But you know, sometimes, a good mix of truth and lies is enough to throw off even the smartest guy." "A mix?" Robin frowned. "What kind of mix?" Luffy lifted his sunglasses, locking eyes with her. "Remember this, Robin. There's no conspiracy in this world that can't be crushed by strength. What is chaos? What is peace? The only reason you're treated like a pawn is because you're weak. But when you have enough power to shake the world, none of that matters anymore. Because you're the one making the rules." A cool breeze swept across the sea, and over the small ship, and over the even smaller figure of Robin. Luffy's words rippled through her like a stone cast into a calm lake. She thought, if only I'd been stronger back then, maybe my mother wouldn't have died. Maybe Saul, maybe O'Hara. Her eyes welled up with tears. Then Luffy spoke again. "But Robin, one person's strength is limited. We all need someone beside us. Just like I need you, you need me too. As my crewmate, my power is your power. If you ever need it, use it. All of it." His voice was firm, his gaze, unwavering. In that frozen moment, Robin engraved his smile into her heart. A second gust of wind blew, but this time, it was stopped by a solid, immovable presence. "Ding. Host has acquired a third crewmate. Please enter the partner system to draw an exclusive item for the new partner. If any locations seem unfamiliar or confusing, don't worry, some of them aren't canon and only exist in this fanfic. Thanks for reading. Iceberg Island. Unlike its neighbor, the Sabayati archipelago, Iceberg Island was devoid of beauty. Instead, two phrases defined it: battered by snow and wind, and a land sculpted from ice and silver. This was a winter island, locked in perpetual frost. The bitter cold clung to the land like a stubborn shadow, unwilling to retreat. Towering snow-covered mountains stood proud at the island's center. Howling blizzards never ceased, sweeping down from the peaks, scouring the landscape in a relentless white fury, leaving no place for life to take root. The port of Iceberg Island. In stark contrast to the lifeless interior, the port buzzed with activity. Its proximity to the Sabayati archipelago made it a natural haven for those fleeing trouble, outlaws who had crossed, powerful people, struggling merchants, slave traders, pirates, even bounty hunters. Many had made this place their refuge. Though the island was surrounded by punishing cold, this narrow strip of coastline had defied nature. Here, people had built a haven of their own, a city for the unwanted, a city of no crimes. In this place, your past meant nothing. So long as you had money, or a willingness to work, you could live as a normal citizen. The ground was coated in white frost, dry and frozen solid. Luffy walked the snowy streets, boots crunching loudly with each step. He carried 2 oversized bags, both stuffed with women's clothing. Just yesterday, it had been swelteringly hot, like being trapped in a steam oven. Today, it was a frozen wasteland, snow falling in thick curtains, cold enough to freeze water midair. The weather on the Grand Line, it really did change on a whim. The cold didn't bother Luffy, of course. But Robin, whose body hadn't yet reached monster level, resilience, was visibly shivering. So Luffy, in full gentleman mode, had spent the entire day accompanying her through every clothing store in the city. Not that there were many. In truth, the shops were few, and fashion was a luxury. Most residents simply bought fur pelts and had a tailor stitch together something functional. When feeding yourself was hard enough, who had time to worry about style? Luffy led the way, the bags in his hands rustling. Robin trailed behind him with a blissful smile, looking like a girl whose boyfriend had just bought her a designer purse. But her happiness ran deeper than that. If one looked closely, they would notice a beautiful black ring on the middle finger of her right hand. It all began about half a month ago. The day Luffy spoke with Doflamingo, after the sun set and his sunbathing session ended, he enjoyed a delicious home-cooked meal from Robin and returned to his room for something equally exciting, his favorite thing, a system lottery draw. As soon as he stepped inside, Luffy gave a command. "System, show me Robin's stat panel." The system replied in its usual cold tone, "Confirmed." Robin's status screen appeared before him. Name: Nico Robin. Talent rating: SS. Stamina: 246. Strength: 86. Agility: 180. Mental power: 600. 600, Luffy murmured. Despite the incredibly high mental power stat, he didn't smile. The mental power stat was influenced by two things: innate talent, and life experience. The destruction of her homeland, the loss of loved ones, betrayal after betrayal, each tragedy had hammered Robin's fragile heart until it became steel. Luffy let out a long sigh. "I won't let you suffer ever again," he promised silently. Shaking off his gloom, he issued his next command. "System, draw Robin's exclusive item." Affirmative. With that, the familiar roulette wheel appeared, spinning with all sorts of strange and powerful items. This time, Luffy didn't bother to look, he closed his eyes. The result was always random anyway. Better to wait in peace. Ding. Host has obtained, Vongola ring, Varia ring. Item stored in inventory. Vongola. Luffy blinked, glancing over at the cotton gloves on his bed. The Vongola ring. That's from the same power system as my X gloves, right? But I don't remember the rings doing anything special. He opened his inventory and pulled up the item's details. Vongola Varia ring. Allows the wearer to use the Sky Flame attribute, propagation. In the reborn universe, this ring is worn by the Vongola's strongest guardian, representing the solitary cloud, free and unbound, who protects the family from afar. Luffy examined the ring in his hand. The band was jet black, inlaid with a swirling purple gold flower design. Silver trims of an unknown metal lined the top and bottom. At its center sat a small shield-shaped gem, engraved with a billowing cloud. Propagation, huh? Sounds perfect for Robin, Luffy thought. It was still early. She's probably in her room reading, he guessed, then walked over to Robin's door, ring in hand. He knocked gently. "Robin, are you there? Can I come in for a moment?" There was some noise inside, but when she heard his voice, it went completely silent. Huh? Luffy frowned, puzzled. He knocked again, a little concerned. "Robin, is everything okay?" Inside, Robin had panicked like a student caught dozing in class. She scrambled to respond, her voice flustered. Yes, Luffy-san. I'm fine. Just give me a second." There were some more hurried, fumbling sounds. Luffy waited patiently, not knowing what was going on. Finally, the door creaked open. Robin stood there in an oversized sweater that reached just past her knees. Her damp hair clung to her face, cheeks flushed with warmth. "Sorry, I was just taking a bath. What's up?" she asked, smiling sweetly. She hadn't had time to dry off completely. The sweater clung to her figure, outlining her curves. Her long, pale legs were bare, and because she was a bit taller than Luffy, she leaned forward slightly as she spoke, her soft smile shining through her freshly washed face. For a moment, Luffy's heart skipped a beat. Even he wasn't immune to beauty like this. But thanks to his absurdly high mental power stat, over 1000, he recovered in seconds. Robin noticed the change in his eyes, from dazed to clear in just 2 seconds. A flicker of disappointment crossed her face. "Still, he stared at me for 1 full second. That definitely counts," she thought secretly, her face curling back into a practiced smile. "So, What is it, Luffy? She asked again, pretending he'd been mesmerized far longer than he was. Luffy didn't overthink it. He simply reached into his pocket and held out the ring. Robin blinked. The moon hung high, its gentle silver light rippling across the sea. The world was quiet, calm, bathed in a serene glow. Robin, Luffy said softly, this is the Varia ring. I hope that when you wear it, you can live like a cloud, free and unbound. And I'll be your sky. I'll hold up the heavens for you, so you have a place to fly. He spoke without flair, yet with unwavering resolve. Their eyes met. Time seemed to slow. Robin's lashes trembled. Slowly, she closed her eyes. Tears threatened to fall from their corners, but she refused to cry, not in a moment this beautiful. Silently, she extended her right hand. Her voice quivered through a smile. Thank you, Luffy. In the moonlight's gentle haze, her heart overflowed, not with pain or confusion, but with warmth, longing, and something far deeper. The sea is endless, but someday, you'll find someone to stand by your side. No one is destined to live alone in this world. Tra-la-hee-hee-hee. That night, Robin sat on her bed, knees hugged to her chest. She stared out the window at the stars above, gently turning the ring in her hand. I've met the one you spoke of, Saul, she whispered. After returning to the ship, Luffy dropped off the newly bought clothes. He still couldn't figure it out. Why had Robin bought so many winter outfits? Their log pose would only take a week to reset, surely one coat would have been enough. He puzzled over it for a while, then shrugged it off. Whatever. It's not like it cost much anyway. After Luffy and Robin went back into the ship's cabin. At the harbor, two men were huddled behind a shipping container, whispering and glancing toward Luffy's ship with suspicious eyes. Is that her? One asked. Should be, the other replied. They were holding a bounty poster, with a picture of a much younger Nico Robin printed on it. But, she looks so different now, the first man said, clearly uncertain. His companion answered firmly, trust my instincts. Besides, that poster's years old. Of course she looks different. Yeah, I guess, the first man mumbled. It wasn't that he didn't trust his partner's judgment, they'd worked together for years with perfect coordination. But he had grown used to the quiet life on Iceberg Island. It was harsh, yes, but it was simple. Peaceful. No chaos. No danger. 3 years ago, they were a feared bounty hunter duo, roaming the first half of the Grand Line. Their tight teamwork and meticulous planning had earned them a reputation. They even once took down a pirate with a bounty of 50 million berries. One night in a bar, while chatting with other bounty hunters, they overheard something that sparked a dream. Someone mentioned that the Sabayati archipelago, despite being near a marine base, was swarming with pirates. Imagine bounty hunting there, the man laughed. Work every day. Gold every day. It was said in jest, but it struck a chord with these two. They remembered that line. Not long after, they saved a merchant ship during a pirate raid. Grateful, the captain paid them handsomely and asked if they'd serve as guards. Their destination. The place of their dreams, Sabayati archipelago. They had ambition. They couldn't stay stagnant forever. So, they left. But dreams are called dreams for a reason, they're hard to reach. When they arrived at Sabayati, they realized the truth. There weren't just a lot of pirates, there were too many. So many that revealing themselves as bounty hunters would be suicide. Still, they adapted, investigated, waited. Eventually, they found their target, a pirate worth 75 million berries. They cornered him in a narrow alley. Ambushed. Killed him. But before they could even celebrate, a slaver gang appeared out of nowhere and surrounded them. The slaver boss was furious. The man they'd just killed had eaten the Senrigan, an extremely valuable ability. A gambling magnate had already paid a fortune to reserve him as a slave. The slaver gang had spent months tracking him down. Now, two nobodies had ruined everything. The boss ordered their execution on the spot. They barely escaped with their lives, fleeing Sabayati and stealing a small boat. Directionless, they drifted until they landed on Iceberg Island. And they stayed. For 3 long years. Even the bounty poster in their hands was still the same one from back then. Lacey, we're not even 30 yet, the man whispered. You really want to spend the next 50 years stuck in a place like this? He was the dreamer of the two. A bounty hunter who refused to let his life be wasted in monotony. But he also knew, without his partner, his strength was halved. That's why he pleaded so hard. Lacey bit his lip, he still couldn't decide. But, wasn't the plan to wait until things settled down before heading back to the Grand Line? You were the one who said we were arrogant, that we needed more experience. You still don't get it, Lacey. The other man, Claris, grabbed him by the shoulders. This is it. This is the moment the heavens handed to us. He leaned closer, eyes blazing. Remember the rumors. That demon kid, Nico Robin, isn't even that strong. Her bounty doesn't match her ability, it's just inflated because she's careful and cautious. Don't you see? This is our ticket back in. This is destiny giving us a chance to rise again. Lacey knocked Claris's arms away, staring at his bloodshot eyes with a strange expression. What's wrong with you, Claris? You never used to talk like this. Claris looked down at his own hands, shocked to see Lacey push him away. The same Lacey who had always been gentle with him. After a long pause, Claris lowered his head. I get it now, Lacey, he said in a strange tone. Huh, get what? I get that there's no going back to how things used to be. His voice was flat. From now on, we will go our separate ways. He turned to leave, face dark. Claris. Lacey reached out and grabbed his arm. Let go of me. Snowflakes drifted down like tiny witnesses to this painful goodbye. That night, the snowfall grew heavier, blanketing the land in a shimmering silver sheet. It was as if fate had drawn the curtain. Claris moved silently through the snow, not making a sound. His stealth was excellent, an art refined over years. He slipped aboard Luffy's ship without a trace. 2 cabins had their lights on. Claris knew one of them belonged to Robin's companion. So they're not a couple. That'll make this easier, he thought to himself. He sniffed lightly. A faint, elegant fragrance drifted from one of the rooms. That must be her, Nico Robin. His eyes narrowed. Tonight, I'll mix that alluring scent with the stench of your filthy blood. Claris crept toward the door. But then he paused. There are only 2 rooms. The other one's clearly the master cabin. Someone important must be staying there. If Robin, a top priority bounty target, is in the side room, then whoever's in the master must be even more dangerous. His palm, wrapped around a dagger, began to sweat. Was it from nerves? Or had he simply gone too long without fighting? Forget it. Just kill the demon kid and get out. No need to linger. He pulled out a small vial of knockout incense and gently fed it through the crack beneath the door. Everything was ready. Or so he thought. Hey! A voice rang out cold and furious. What do you think you're doing to my crewmate? Luffy stood behind him, eyes blazing with rage. Luffy slammed Claris's head into the wall, fury blazing in his eyes. If not for a sudden, inexplicable instinct, Robin might have died tonight. Bastard! Luffy snarled, tightening his grip. Feeling the sheer strength radiating from Luffy's hand, Claris wisely chose not to resist with brute force. Instead, he reached for the dagger at his waist and blindly stabbed toward Luffy's head. But with observation haki activated, Luffy easily tilted his head to avoid the strike. That attack, however, completely shattered Luffy's patience. He lifted Claris by the head. Boom! And slammed him viciously into the deck. The wooden boards cracked, caving in from the force. Claris groaned, seriously injured. His vision blurred, blood sputtering from his lips. He was barely conscious, held face down by Luffy. What's going on? Robin rushed out at the noise, opening the cabin door to find Luffy pinning someone violently to the floor. She didn't believe for a second that Luffy would pick a midnight fight for no reason. Concerned, Robin asked, "Who is he, Luffy?" Without loosening his grip, Luffy smiled at her calmly. "No one is important. Just a petty thief. Go back and rest." He didn't mention Claris's true target to avoid worrying her. Luffy wanted her to know, while he was here, nothing would harm her. But then Claris, nearly unconscious, stirred. With his dislocated jaw hanging loose, he choked out, "I'm not just some petty thief, I'm Claris, the world's future #1 bounty hunter." It took every ounce of strength he had to get those words out. Sadly, his timing couldn't have been worse. Bounty hunter. Robin's pupils shrank. Smart as she was, she instantly grasped the situation. After all, she was the only person on this ship with a bounty. She had spent years dodging bounty hunters. Her eyes darkened, the memories flooding back, but instead of fear, she felt something stir, something powerful. She was no longer the woman who only knew how to run. Now she had protection, a shield of her own. All she needed was the will to hold it tight. Robin stepped forward calmly and said, "Let me handle this, Luffy." "It's nothing, really. This guy's just." Luffy stopped mid-sentence. His eyes widened. Robin's right hand was engulfed in a brilliant purple flame. The Vongola ring, a symbol of inner resolve, manifested the wearer's will as fire. The brighter the blaze, the stronger the determination. Seeing her awakening, Luffy slowly released his grip on Claris. The cloud-style ring had changed, its black and white swirl had turned fully black, and the flames on it condensed into a proud, regal amethyst crystal. Claris collapsed, barely able to hold himself up. Cough. More blood spattered the deck. Though Luffy had aimed for his crown twice, Claris wasn't yet incapacitated, just concussed. He staggered up, shaking his head, trying to clear the blood from his vision. Luffy stepped aside, curious to witness Robin's rebirth. Claris knew escape was no longer an option. The gap in power was clear. Still, if he had to die, he would do so with dignity, in combat. Raising his dagger in a standard stance, he prepared to lunge. "Claris." A voice called out, and a figure landed heavily on deck. "Claris, I'm here." The man was clad in steel armor, wielding a greatsword, his biceps bulging. "Sorry I'm late. Took a while to gear up." Claris's bloodied lips curled into a faint smirk, though his words said otherwise. "Traitor, get lost. You're saying that now. Isn't it a bit late?" Lacey charged forward with his greatsword, aiming for Robin. Claris instantly moved faster, overtaking Lacey. "I don't need your help," he shouted, even as he flanked Robin from the side. Lacey struck head-on, while Claris attacked from the side, an old routine. Even after 3 years apart, their coordination was sharp. Unfortunately, their opponent was no longer the same Robin. She saw right through them. The proud, violet Vongola flame surged from her ring, enveloping her entirely. Cherry blossom petals swirled inside the translucent blaze. Arms sprouted from the deck and combined into 2 enormous hands, clasped protectively around Robin. The sword and dagger clanged uselessly against the giant palms, scattering petals, no real damage done. "Damn it, she's a devil fruit user." The massive hands faded away. Robin crossed her arms, her palms opening as she whispered. "Echenta fleur, quattro manos, shock." Sakura petals filled the air. From the deck rose 4 towering limbs, each forming a colossal fist. Boom, 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 boom. One after another, the fists rained down on Claris and Lacey. Lacey raised his sword to block, but the blow launched him off the ship, sending him crashing into a distant patch of ground. Claris weaved between the strikes with agile footwork. But the moment he glanced at Lacey's battered body, he faltered. Robin seized the moment. A giant hand grabbed him and slammed him beside Lacey, leaving a crater in the earth. "That'll keep the deck clean," Robin muttered. One eye shimmered with life, the other burned with an eerie purple flame. "Cooking is already a hassle. Cleaning up too. That's just depressing." Luffy, who had been planning to check on the bounty hunters, froze mid-step. He stared at Robin's silhouette and thought to himself, "Maybe I should try cooking tomorrow." Far off, in the snowy clearing. Cough. Claris spat more blood. Bones broken, barely breathing, he could no longer move. Lacey's ribs were shattered, but seeing Claris's condition, he forced himself up and lifted his comrade. He knew they were out of time. Claris's internal injuries, the head trauma, nearly knocked him out cold. Blood and tears mixed in his eyes as he whispered, "Forget me, Lacey, run to the city. You might still make it out alive. Don't talk nonsense. Did you forget our vow? 1 life, 2 brothers, live and die together." Lacey dared not look back. He hoisted Claris onto his shoulders and fled toward the town, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Claris, I never told you, I fell in love with Laura. I want a normal life. I was going to tell you, later." Claris's head drooped. After a long pause, he sighed. "I already knew. But she loves you. That's why you wanted to leave so fast. I knew." Crunch, crunch. The sound of boots crushing snow cut through the moment. Luffy and Robin had caught up with ease. "You didn't actually think I'd let you go, did you?" Luffy's voice was calm, but his eyes still burned. Lacy stopped. He knew it was over. Suddenly, Clarus burst from his arms and dropped to his knees. Blood and tears ran down his battered face. Legs twisted, vision fading, he cried out. "Please, sir, let Lacy go. It was all my doing. I acted alone. If it pleases you, I'll kill myself here and now. I beg you, please have mercy." He bowed again and again, his skull hitting the frozen ground with heavy thuds. Luffy stood silently, watching the scene. He could feel the weight of their bond. "I respect your brotherhood," he said gently. He nodded to Robin. "But, that can't excuse your attempt to hurt my crewmate." Dos fleur, grab. Two phantom arms emerged behind Clarus, grasping his head and crack. Clarus. No. Ah. Lacy lost control, watching his brother die in front of him, those eyes still filled with guilt. He roared and swung his greatsword at Luffy. Ryusoken. A blazing dragon engulfed him, consuming everything. He collapsed beside Clarus. Minutes later, all that remained was melted snow and a layer of ash. Falling snowflakes soon began to bury it all again, as if nothing had ever happened. Ding. Congratulations, your partner defeated a bounty hunter. Express 9800, gold 29,000. Ding. You defeated a bounty hunter. Express 9500, gold 25,000. Ding. Level up complete. Current level, 24. Huh. Luffy blinked at the system notifications. So I get rewards even when my crew lands the kill. That's awesome. Located at the midpoint of the Grand Line, just before the Red Line, it was the final stop before entering the New World, a crucial convergence point for the first half of the journey. This archipelago wasn't made of typical islands. It was composed of massive, towering trees. Their giant roots formed the ground beneath one's feet. From the soil, resin bubbles constantly rose to the surface, drifting lazily into the air like delicate soap spheres. Because of this, Sabayati was also known as the Bubble Archipelago. The entire island consisted of 79 massive, Urukiman mangrove trees, the largest red trees in the world. Each tree was individually numbered and hosted its own structures. Towns and facilities were built upon their roots, and the archipelago was divided into 6 distinct zones, each with its own unique function. Luffy slowly docked the ship beneath Tree No. 70. "We finally made it," he murmured, gazing at the sky filled with floating bubbles. The island looked like a dream. It had been nearly 2 years since he'd left the Goa Kingdom. Outside of the X gloves and Robin's bonus attributes, Luffy hadn't made significant level progress. He had come to a realization: experience points weren't the key anymore, gold was. With gold, he could buy better equipment and ascend to higher ranks. That was the real path to power. Right now, Luffy's stamina, agility, and mental power attributes had all surpassed 1000. His strength stat had also crossed the 900 mark. Much of that growth had come from attribute bonuses granted by Zoro, Nami, and Robin. Robin's new power had emerged only recently. She had already experienced a major leap in strength, so another rapid breakthrough wasn't likely in the short term. But when paired with the fiery force of the X gloves, Luffy's average attack damage was now calculated as Strength Mental Power 1.5, amounting to over 2,500 points per strike. At this point, Luffy could confidently say, if Doflamingo came to fight him head-on, and both sides relied only on raw stamina and brawn, he could wear him down. Still, raw power wasn't everything. Luffy glanced at the in-game shop, where an item called the Binding Immortal Rope was priced at 10 million gold. Who knows what kind of dirty tricks his enemies might use next. TCH. Gotta make money. He also needed to return to MT Kalubo within a year to send Ace off on his voyage. That meant he had about 2 years to stay on Sabayati Archipelago. And here, what excited him most wasn't just the pirates everywhere. It was the slave hunters, and the celestial dragons. While Robin curiously took in their new surroundings, Luffy smiled and said, "Let's go find a place to stay first." Huh. Oh, right. Robin snapped out of her daze, then pointed toward a beautiful inn in the distance. How about that one? It looks lovely. She had been eyeing it for a while. At some point, the Robin who had always lived in the shadows had started longing for beautiful things. Luffy followed her gaze. The inn was indeed luxurious, towering several meters high and occupying a wide plaza. Its grand golden facade gleamed in the sunlight. Two well-dressed doormen stood by the entrance, helping guests with their luggage. It was clearly a top-tier hotel. But Luffy shook his head gently and said, as if seeking Robin's opinion, "It's a bit too flashy. We'll be staying here a long time, and doing things that aren't exactly honorable." Robin understood. Though a little disappointed, she nodded sensibly. "Okay." After thinking for a moment, Luffy grinned. "Here's an idea, let's buy a residential house here. You can decorate it however you like. Make it your own." He flashed her a sweet smile. Robin's blank expression gradually shifted. Her eyes sparkled, and she broke into a radiant grin. "Sounds perfect." In that moment, Robin, the elegant young woman in the bloom of youth, let out a playful, girlish laugh. She was showing her truest, happiest self to the person who meant the most to her. As she walked beside Luffy through the streets of Sabayati, watching rainbow-colored bubbles shimmer in the sun, Robin began to imagine the life they could live here together. A quiet, peaceful life under the same roof. A simple, ordinary kind of happiness. She knew deep down that such a life wasn't meant for people like them. Their identities wouldn't allow it. Still, she yearned for it. Hoped for it. Imagined the day it might come true. "I should really start learning how to cook," Robin thought, smiling faintly. Meanwhile, Luffy's mind was occupied with something else entirely. How to make gold, fast. At this point, becoming a bounty hunter was the best cover and the best career move. It was, after all, what he used to do. Step 1. Gather information. And the best place for intel in Sabayati. Shaki's rip-off bar. The problem was, after so many years, Luffy couldn't quite remember where the bar was located. Luckily, the name was distinctive enough. With a little asking around, he'd find it soon enough. Alright, next week, just as Luffy was about to lay out the next steps, he noticed Robin was completely immersed in the sights around them. Street vendors, bubble-modified vehicles, and warm, peaceful scenes that felt like a fairy tale. Her eyes shimmered with joy. Her lips curled in a gentle, bride-like smile. She clasped one hand in the other, as if holding the hand of someone she loved. She walked closely behind Luffy, utterly focused on the world around her. Only now did Luffy realize that this Robin was nothing like the calm, composed intellectual from the original timeline. "Maybe, I should reconsider my plans," he thought quietly. Robin, noticing his sudden silence, turned to him curiously. "What is it?" Luffy gave a soft smile. Sunlight streamed through the rainbow-tinted bubbles, illuminating his ocean-blue eyes with a gentle warmth. "Let's take our time exploring today," he said. "We'll try the local street food, eat to our heart's content." He turned and pointed into the distance at a massive bubble-shaped Ferris wheel. "Then we'll spend the whole day at that amusement park, and tonight, we'll stay at that hotel you liked so much. That's our plan for the day." He said it all in one breath, trying to cram in every idea that had crossed his mind. Robin's heart fluttered, like a butterfly dancing in a sun-drenched flower field. Her chest swelled with happiness so warm it felt like her whole body was smiling. It was as if the storm cloud that had long loomed over her heart finally burst, releasing pure joy like fireworks in the sky. And so, just as Luffy promised, he took Robin, giddy as a girl, to explore every corner of the island. Time was short, so some places they could only pass by briefly. But Luffy made her a promise. There will be many more days like this. That night, lying in the luxurious hotel suite, Robin felt a truth settle in her heart. Ever since Luffy entered her life, every single day had become priceless. The morning sun shone brightly. After a full day of playing and a long, restful sleep, Luffy and Robin stepped out of the luxury hotel nestled beneath Red Tree number 70, both refreshed and full of energy. Today, they had serious business to attend to. After asking around from the hotel all the way through town, they finally found their destination, Shaki's Rip-Off Bar, located at Red Tree No. 13. The bar itself was a small, moss-covered stone building. The exterior walls were weathered, with bits of plaster peeling off in places. Despite its worn-out appearance, a conspicuously bold sign hung above the entrance, reading in large letters, Shaki's Rip-Off Bar. Robin curiously inspected the place. No matter how she looked at it, she couldn't understand why Luffy would go to such lengths, getting up early, asking around endlessly, just to find this place. But then again, Luffy's decisions are always the right ones, she smiled gently to herself, keeping a short but respectful distance behind him as she followed his lead. This should be it. Luffy strode up and pushed open the bar's creaky door. Ding-a-ling. The sound of wind chimes greeted them. But as soon as Luffy and Robin stepped inside, both froze in place at the doorway. The bar was crowded, at least a dozen people inside. At the center stood a striking woman with a well-maintained figure, though time had etched faint lines into her once youthful face. At that moment, the woman had her hand clamped around a pirate's head. Bang! With a single punch, she smashed him into the floor. Blood sprayed across the room, some of it landing near Luffy's feet. "Oh, customers," the woman said casually, lighting a cigarette as if nothing had happened. "Just a moment, let me finish extorting these guys." Robin instinctively took a step back and tugged at Luffy's sleeve, giving him a look of concern. Clearly, Shaki's presence was overwhelming. Even Luffy was momentarily startled by her ferocity. But he quickly composed himself, squeezing Robin's hand gently and giving her a reassuring nod. "All right, we'll just go sit over there," he said calmly. He led Robin to a quiet corner as they watched Shaki proceed to beat and rob a group of hapless pirates who had clearly wandered into the wrong bar. Eventually, the pirates, after giving up all their valuables, were allowed to flee in shame. While Luffy was focused on observing Shaki's strength, he didn't notice the look on Robin's face, blushing, eyes sparkling, then shyly lowering her head. Her fingers tightly held his hand, her demeanor soft and bashful. "Hey there, handsome and beautiful, what can I do for you too?" Shaki called out after finishing her business, and walking over with confident strides. She moved with graceful strength, slim waist, agile legs, and solid frame. Every motion carried a wild charm. Luffy instinctively let go of Robin's hand, leaving her visibly disappointed. Resting his hands on the table, his deep eyes locked onto Shaki's with an unaffected smile. It was as if the prior scene had left no impression at all. "Nice to meet you, beautiful lady," he said smoothly. "I've heard the Sabayati archipelago is full of hidden masters. Today's been quite the eye-opener, haha." "Don't flatter me, kid," Shaki chuckled, tapping the ash from her cigarette. "What'll you two have to drink?" She had sensed their presence even before they stepped through the door. From the moment they arrived, Luffy's confident aura, though devoid of any outward threat, betrayed the unmistakable bearing of a strong individual. And with her sharp intuition and powerful mental power, Shaki had felt it instantly. "If possible, I'll have a glass of milk." As for Robin, Luffy looked to her for input. Robin gave a small smile and nodded. "Then one milk, one lemonade." "Thanks," Luffy said. "All right, coming right up," Shaki replied. Ding-a-ling-ling. Just as she turned away, the bar door opened again. An old man stepped inside. He had long, silver hair and a matching beard. He wore glasses, and a vertical scar ran across his right eye. The air about him was carefree, almost irreverent. "Phew, lots of work today," he muttered as he casually walked to the bar counter and took a seat. "Shaki, bring me a drink." Then, as if only just noticing the other customers, he turned to Luffy and Robin with a sheepish smile. "Oh, didn't see you there. Sorry about that." But as the old man turned his head, Luffy's face suddenly tensed. In that instant, a strange wave of mental power pressure surged toward them like a crashing tide. Luffy immediately focused his aura, shielding himself and Robin from the invisible probing force. Pop! The air pulsed faintly, almost imperceptibly. Just like that, Luffy and the old man exchanged their first blow, subtle but unmistakable. Luffy knew the man meant no harm, but still, his instincts went on alert. Because sitting casually at the counter, sipping alcohol, was none other than the man once known as the right hand of the Pirate King, Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King. Though retired and long hidden from the world, his strength and speed remained formidable. He could easily intercept Admiral Kizaru with a sword and swim unaided through calm belts teeming with sea kings. A living legend from the previous era, his might rivaled even Whitebeard of the Four Emperors. Rayleigh's eyes lit up in surprise. He had merely used observation haki as a habit, intending to get a feel for these new arrivals. But he hadn't expected his probe to be so easily blocked by a young man. Not only that, he had caught a faint glimpse of a kingly aura buried deep within Luffy. Though still immature, the potential was undeniable. "What a terrifying young man," Rayleigh murmured, lifting his glass and offering Luffy an apologetic toast. He sipped slowly, his eyes calm but razor-sharp. Meanwhile, Shaki returned with the drinks and placed them in front of Luffy and Robin. Her gaze lingered on Luffy with renewed curiosity. Though her observation haki wasn't as refined as Rayleigh's, she had witnessed the brief mental clash and was deeply intrigued. Despite her renowned intelligence network, she had never heard of a powerful young man like this. But that wasn't entirely her fault. Luffy had been at sea for nearly 2 years but had never publicly revealed his identity. The only exception was at the Camus auction house, and even then, thanks to Doflamingo's manipulation, hardly anyone knew who he truly was. As a result, Luffy remained an unknown name across the Grand Line. Luffy accepted the drinks and nodded in thanks. Then, without further pretense, he said, "Let's get to the point. Shaki-san, we're bounty hunters. We've come here to buy information on some high-value pirate targets." "Oh." Shaki's slender waist gave a graceful twist, her tone laced with flirtation as she looked at Luffy. "Little guy, that request of yours doesn't exactly follow the rules of intelligence trading, now does it? Rules are dead things, but people are alive, aren't they?" Seeing that Shaki hadn't outright refused, Luffy knew the deal still had potential. Of course, he had another option too. If he revealed his identity as Roger's son, he was confident that both Shaki and Rayleigh would trade information with him in a heartbeat. But he wasn't about to do that. Something about it felt wrong, like he'd be using Ace. Shaki exhaled a puff of smoke, her eyes narrowing with intrigue. "How about this, I'll give you a piece of info that you don't know yet, but won't be too hard to confirm." Tossing her cigarette butt into a nearby bin, she continued, "A big name showed up on Sabayati Archipelago this year. Practically the whole island's buzzing about it. I'm guessing you two just arrived recently, huh?" As she spoke, she reached into the mysterious, dimensional pocket in her chest and pulled out a pristine bounty poster. Seeing this oddly familiar move, Luffy instinctively turned to glance at Robin's own chest pocket. Under Luffy's curious gaze, Robin blushed and lowered her head shyly, avoiding his eyes entirely. Shaki laid the poster flat on the table and tapped her finger against the wood. "This is this year's hottest new rookie in the first half of the Grand Line, Reaper, George. Bounty, 270 million. She looked at the sheet seriously. He led his crew to take down an entire marine base, and wiped out everyone inside. Slaughtered, gutted, the bounty's high not just because of his strength, but how brutally he operates. A real up-and-coming supernova. He arrived in Sabayati just 3 days ago. Word is he recently ran into a marine fleet and managed to escape from a captain, though he lost a lot of crew. Right now, he's recruiting, prepping to charge into the new world." With that, Shaki pulled out another paper from her chest, this one a bit wrinkled, and laid it beside the bounty sheet. It was a simple flyer, showing a bloody pirate flag. Below it, a line of small text. "February 14th, afternoon, tomorrow. Crew recruitment near Grove 32. Only accepting vicious pirates with bounties over 10 million or devil fruit users. Let's chase our dreams together in the new world." Luffy picked up the bounty poster and studied it. The man pictured was a bulky bald brute wearing only a fur vest, his chest bare. He held a silver crescent blade in one hand, while behind him rose a mountain of corpses, blood everywhere. His face wore a twisted smile of cruelty and satisfaction. Luffy thought for a moment, then set it down and picked up the recruitment flyer. Robin took the bounty poster, brows furrowing at the pile of bodies in the background. After a pause, she shook her head slightly, returning the sheet to Shaki. "All right, it's decided then." Luffy clapped his hands on the table with a grin and downed the last of his milk. "Thanks a bunch, Shaki-san." Shaki's forehead twitched at the word. A furious vein popped out, like a kanji character forming on her skin. "Shish Shaki-san." But Luffy, oblivious, kept grinning cheerfully. "Oh, right, there's one more thing, Shaki-san. We're looking for a place to live, not too big. It should be easy for someone like you to arrange, right?" "Ah, you okay, Shaki-san." Boom. Suddenly, a huge hole exploded in the bar wall. A figure went flying through the air and slammed into a thick tree trunk outside. "Luffy." It happened too fast, Robin didn't even have time to react. One moment, Luffy was there, the next, he'd been sent flying by a punch from Shaki. Snapping back to her senses, Robin instantly crossed her arms. Tried to fool her. Wait, Robin. Luffy, groaning, pushed himself off the ground and shouted desperately toward her. Dozens of arms had sprouted from all over Shaki's body, ready to snap every joint she had, until a wave of hockey pressure hit Robin, making her stagger. Her focus shattered. Her devil fruit powers vanished. Don't attack. Don't attack, Luffy yelled, dashing back to Robin's side in a flash. He stood between her and Shaki, arms outstretched to block the next move. Shaki didn't hesitate, she stormed forward, grabbed Luffy by the ear, and gave it a painful twist. You brat, who are you calling? Ow ow ow, I'm sorry. Shaki-san, it's Shaki-san, Luffy begged, finally realizing why he'd been punched so suddenly. After giving his ear one last twist, Shaki let go and scolded him, Kid, when you're talking to a woman, choose your words more carefully. She shot a look at Robin for emphasis. Lighting another cigarette, she blew a smoke ring and added, Fine. I won't shake you two down today. But, you're fixing that wall, and going forward, half of all your bounty earnings go to me. That's your payment for intelligence. Robin now understood the situation, but she still couldn't forgive Shaki for hitting Luffy. When Shaki glanced her way, Robin didn't hold back, she glared right back with equal intensity. Fine, Luffy said hurriedly, nodding like a bobblehead as he agreed to the terms. Shaki returned to the bar, pulled a key from a drawer, and tossed it to Luffy. Here, it's a place by Grove 14. Call it a rental. Rent is 10 million a month. Luffy caught the key with a sigh and shoved it into his pocket. He'd accepted the completely ridiculous rental agreement. There's a building supply shop by Grove 10. Go buy what you need and fix that wall before sundown. Shaki barked, one arm folded under her chest, the other holding her cigarette, eyes glinting coldly. Yes sir. Yes ma'am. Luffy responded, dragging Robin with him as they fled the scene. Shaki took a long drag from her cigarette, letting out a thick cloud of smoke. After a moment, she muttered, Kids these days, really something else. I put my full strength into that punch, and the brat didn't even break a sweat. The foul second-hand smoke drifted toward Rayleigh, who coughed twice before saying, surprised, that girl's no slouch either. She only flinched for a moment under my hockey, then she was ready to strike again. Yeah, Shaki glanced at her own shoulder with a lingering chill. That ability was so fast, I couldn't even react. A gust of wind blew through Shaki's rip-off bar. Rayleigh sat there sipping his drink in silence, eyes unfocused, lost in thought. A sprawling leisure plaza sat at its heart, lush green grass, vibrant flowers, birds chirping in the trees. On normal days, this peaceful place was filled with locals walking their kids and pets, basking in the harmonious atmosphere. But today, something was clearly off. It was high noon. The sun blazed overhead, yet the entire 32nd half-port was eerily deserted. Every home had shut its doors, and all businesses had closed. A chilling tension filled the air, putting every passerby on edge. Most residents had already caught wind of what was coming and evacuated the area the day before. Now, those who still remained in the plaza were no ordinary civilians, they were hardened criminals with hands stained in blood, each boasting bounties in the tens of millions. Some pirates with slightly lower bounties had shown up too, hoping to try their luck. And not everyone here had come to join the Reaper pirates. A number of self-important captains and rogue crews, unwilling to serve under others, had arrived just to spectate. But any pirate bold enough to loiter here wasn't one to be underestimated. Within the crowd, a short but stocky man, built like a human bullet, casually patted the two pistols at his waist. He leaned toward the tall, cloaked man beside him and said quietly, "Boss, looks like the time's just about right. The scouts are back with words." A moment later, the man under the cloak grunted in a muffled voice, "Good. If everything's in place, let's begin." With that, the cloaked man turned and slipped away from the crowd. The short man hurried after him. Luffy caught a brief glimpse of the two as they passed by, but didn't give them much thought. Soon, the sun dipped lower in the sky. The 500-plus pirates gathered there grew restless. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Around the plaza, various pirate crews had staked out their own territory. The captains stood watch, eyes narrowed, faces dark. "Boss, if the Reaper pirates really take them all in, won't they become a powerhouse in the New World overnight?" One underling said, awestruck by the scene. "It's not that simple," the captain replied, his tone sharp with cynicism. "Don't forget, there are still the 4 emperors in the New World. If Reaper George tries to absorb all this talent, he might provoke the wrath of those giants." The captain glanced toward the crowd. There were several pirates with bounties rivaling his own, all eagerly awaiting George's recruitment. His expression darkened further, but he forced himself to remain composed. "Keep an eye out. See if there's anyone worth inviting to our crew. I've got an 88 million bounty." Captain Zoyama doesn't answer to just anyone. He gave a cold snort. "This might be the perfect chance to boost our strength. We'll see who has the last laugh." Despite the bitterness in his tone, his envy was plain to hear, and it made the nearby pirate crew smirk. They were thinking the exact same thing. 5 more minutes passed. The noise swelled. Pushing and shoving broke out, and a few hotheads even started throwing punches. Then, without warning, a shadow appeared atop the tallest statue in the plaza. No one had noticed when he got there. He stood too far away for anyone to make out his features, only that he was bald. "Hey, you maggots!" The bald man bellowed, arms stretched wide, instantly capturing everyone's attention. "You've all been summoned here today." Luffy narrowed his eyes and looked up at the statue. The bald figure began his speech, voice booming. "This isn't just some random gathering. This is about our dreams. Wealth, power, everything we desire. From this moment on, you'll be my subordinates. I will be your supreme leader. I will lead you." "Found him. He's here." Before the speech could finish, a loud voice shouted from outside the plaza. "Mobilize. Surround them. Now." Thud, 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 thud. All exits of Zone 32 are secured. "Reaper George, you're completely surrounded." The Marine had arrived, thousands of them, encircling the entire plaza with airtight precision. Cannon after cannon aimed straight at the mass of gathered pirates. "Damn, it's the Marine. There's so many of them. What do we do now?" Even the captains who'd just come to watch were thrown into panic. Nearly 2,000 Marines, armed to the teeth with heavy weaponry, it was nothing short of a death sentence. At the center of the formation, a lone figure marched forward. It was none other than Captain Vincent, Great Axe, the same man who'd been chasing the Reaper pirates since the Grand Line. Vincent parted the ranks, raising his massive battle axe high. He roared at the crowd. "This is the end of the line, pirates. Surrender peacefully, or die like dogs." Then, he looked up at the figure on the statue with a blazing fury in his eyes. "Reaper George, today, you will die. I will avenge every last one of my fallen comrades." Vincent's bloodshot eyes burned with rage. He brought down his axe with a roar, the force of it sending a massive shockwave tearing through the ground. Boom! Several pirates had no time to react, they were cleaved clean in half. That scene, Vincent would never forget it. The day he arrived at the naval base for resupply. He found thousands of corpses piled at the gates. The base commander's severed head sat at the top of the heap, eyes wide in terror, mouth frozen in a scream. Not a single one of them had died in peace. From that moment on, Vincent had sworn an oath. He would personally bring Reaper George and his crew to justice. Now, the time has finally come. The previous chase had hit the Reaper pirates hard. Desperate to regroup and prepare for the new world, they had made the fatal mistake of recruiting openly, and the Marine had taken the bait. It was the perfect trap. "All units, fire at will," Vincent commanded. "Mission: eliminate every pirate on the field." Instantly, gunfire and cannon blasts erupted, painting the plaza in blood and chaos. Under normal circumstances, Vincent might have cared about military conduct or the Marines' image. But not today. Not after what the Reaper pirates had done. Today, he wanted them all dead. Now, he finally understood why Admiral Akainu was always so ruthless. This was absolute justice. Justice that protected peace. "Luffy, what do we do?" Robin asked anxiously amid the chaos. But Luffy said nothing, his jaw clenched tight. After a moment, he let out a frustrated breath and muttered. "We've been played." "What?" Robin asked, confused. Luffy didn't respond. He crouched low and sprang upward in a burst of speed, landing on the high platform in an instant. He grabbed the bald man by the throat, eyes sharp and cold. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Let go of me." The bald man clawed desperately at Luffy's arms, struggling with all his might, but it was useless. Luffy held him up in one hand, his gaze fixed on the chaos below, where bullets and cannon fire were tearing through lives like paper. His heart ached. Those were all my gold coins down there. Damn it, I got careless again. Over the years, Luffy had grown used to relying on overwhelming strength or foresight from his system to crush threats or avoid danger. But this was the first time he'd been tricked, by a nobody who didn't even exist in the original story. Looking back, it should have been obvious. Sabayati Archipelago was close to a marine base. Recruiting pirates here might pass for a lesser crew, but for the infamous Reaper pirates, criminals who had slaughtered a naval outpost, the Marine would never allow that disgrace to spread into the New World. Unfortunately, their opponent had been smarter than expected. The Reaper pirates had deliberately leaked false information and hired some poor bastard to play decoy. To pull a stunt like this, fooling the Marine and a crowd of ruthless pirates, this bald man was as good as dead. Because Captain Vincent was here, Luffy couldn't risk exposing Robin. Otherwise, with her powers, those hundreds of pirates would have been taken care of in no time. Watching pirate after pirate fall, Luffy's fury boiled over. He hoisted the bald man up and hurled him straight toward Captain Vincent like a cannonball. Amid the chaos, he darted back to Robin's side. Ignoring the concern in her eyes, he said quickly, "Robin, find a way to escape. Now. But, trust me, I'll be fine." Without waiting for a reply, Luffy plunged into the fray. Time was money, and he wasn't wasting a second more. Meanwhile, the bald man crashed down at Vincent's feet, smashing a crater into the ground. Vincent's eyes turned to Luffy. He had noticed Luffy the moment he leapt up and subdued Reaper George so effortlessly. Vincent had fought George himself. He knew that a 270 million bounty wasn't just handed out lightly. Now Luffy was rampaging through the crowd, attacking pirates instead of siding with them. Vincent couldn't make sense of his actions. But Vincent wasn't a thinker, he was a doer. And when you don't understand something, you ask with an axe. He lifted his massive battle axe and let out a furious roar that sent chills through both pirates and marine soldiers alike. Rankyaku. He swung his axe violently, sending a flurry of shockwaves slicing through the air toward Luffy. Each slash ripped the air apart, creating vacuum bursts so intense they kicked up whirlwinds, sending clouds of dust spiraling as the shockwaves tore through the battlefield, blasting aside any pirate in their path as they honed in on Luffy. Prepared for the attack, Luffy punched through a pirate in front of him, then turned. He raised his fist, gathering an overwhelming surge of energy. Flames erupted, casting the world in red. A fiery giant, like a god descending from the heavens, rose behind him, towering into the sky. The clouds overhead turned crimson. The sun itself seemed to dim, as if unwilling to challenge Luffy's brilliance. The air grew dry and hot, dozens of pirates passed out from lack of oxygen. Ryusoken. With that, Luffy hurled his blazing punch at the incoming shockwaves. The flame giant clashed with the whirlwind slashes like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, incinerating every pirate caught in between. What the hell is that? Damn it, this isn't a fight we can join. Scatter. Get away now. Who is that guy? In that moment, both Marines and pirates had only one thought: run. Even the aftershocks of this battle were far beyond what any of them could endure. But the expected explosion never came. Instead, the fire and wind merged, under Luffy's control, into a towering flaming tornado that blazed between Luffy and Vincent. The twister grew stronger, faster, pulling in every weak pirate nearby, burning them to ash before scattering them across the scorched earth like fertilizer for a reborn battlefield. Sweat trickled from Vincent's palms. That last attack had been 80% of his full power, a test of Luffy's strength. And yet, Luffy had absorbed it, amplified it, and redirected it against the pirates without breaking a sweat. Vincent knew, if that tornado had come for him, he wouldn't have survived unscathed. The firestorm continued to rage, scorching grass, blood, and bodies, restoring the land to its raw, scorched beginnings. The system chimed again and again as pirate bounties were claimed. Finally, when no one remained standing, Luffy raised his hand. Instantly, the flames froze in place, then scattered into embers that drifted gently to the ground like stardust. Luffy looked around. No signs of life. He turned to the wary captain and said calmly, "Relax, Marine-san. No need to be so tense." But Vincent didn't lower his guard. Gripping his axe tightly, he growled, "Who are you?" He knew he might not be Luffy's match, but he wasn't some coward. The day he put on a Marine uniform was the day he vowed never to run from duty. "Don't get the wrong idea," Luffy said. "I'm just a bounty hunter." He gestured to the dying pirate behind Vincent. "As you can see, we had the same target today. And we both got played." Vincent's eyes flicked back to the crater. And froze. His pupils shrank. His face twisted in rage. He'd fought the real George before, he knew exactly what the bastard looked like. This bald guy. Aside from being roughly the same size, he didn't resemble George at all. Vincent had been tricked. First the distance, then the distraction with Luffy, he hadn't looked closely until now. Arrgh. With a furious roar, Vincent brought down his axe and ended the bald man's life for good. Then he howled into the sky, venting his fury and humiliation. The battle was over. Hundreds of pirates lay dead, only a lucky few or those with special abilities managed to escape. Luffy's name echoed through the Sabayati archipelago like a storm. It wouldn't be long before it spread across the entire Grand Line. Yesterday, the government marine launched a large-scale ambush on the Sabayati archipelago, wiping out a significant number of pirates in one fell swoop. Over 500 pirates with bounties on their heads were eliminated, including but not limited to a bounty of 88 million, 79 million, and others worth 50 million or more. Under the leadership of the world government, the seas are peaceful and orderly. The people live and work in happiness, singing praises of the government's wise leadership and the might of the marine. We must steadfastly support the governance of the world government. It is the only correct path toward global prosperity and the well-being of all peoples. Excerpt from World Economic Journal. Doflamingo folded the newspaper, rubbed his temples, and looked puzzled as he turned to Treybol. "That brat just told us to look at the paper." Treybol sniffed noisily, barely catching the mucus that was about to drip down, scratched his head, and replied, "Yeah, I think that's all he said." Doflamingo lowered his head in thought, then suddenly his eyes lit up. He reopened the newspaper, walked to the balcony of the Dressrosa Royal Palace, and gazed out toward the sea. "He's probably trying to tell us the marine is preparing to strike the New World." "What?" Treybol gasped, disbelief written all over his face. And he couldn't really be blamed for his surprise. Lately, the New World has been rocked by a series of fierce battles. It had only just begun to settle down when red-haired Shanks surged to power, claiming the title of emperor with unmatched momentum. With that, the balance of the four emperors was finally established. The New World was carved up neatly, and no one dared make reckless moves anymore. Doflamingo adjusted his sunglasses with a finger and continued to analyze, as if confirming his own speculation. This operation by the marine essentially wiped out almost all the pirates on the first half of the Grand Line. That means the New World has lost a key source of fresh blood. Now, Red Hair has only just ascended to his throne. His foundation isn't solid yet. The Marines striking down this many rookie pirates might be their way of sending a message to the other three emperors, undermining Shanks' position. There's no way those three old guard emperors will be happy sharing the stage with a young upstart like him. If that sparks conflict among them, the Marine just has to sit back and watch the show. A brilliant move. At that moment, a particular figure surfaced in Doflamingo's mind, a person who had once hounded him across the seas like a ghost. Vice Admiral Suru, the Marine's chief strategist. Damn it. That scheming old hag, it has to be her. Just thinking of her gave Doflamingo a chill. Suru had become a lingering fear buried in his heart. And that brat too, he predicted everything. He remembered clearly what Luffy had told him that day. To be able to see through the world's geopolitical shifts with such clarity, making bold predictions that had now all come true, it made Doflamingo look at Luffy in a whole new light. TCH. Anyone who's fit to play the game, would never settle for being a pawn. What exactly are you waiting for? Dressrosa, land of love, passion, and toys. In the streets, every person, every toy, wore a bright and joyful smile. Achoo. Far away, Back on the Sabayati archipelago, Luffy sat cozily in a small house, eating freshly washed fruit that Robin had prepared. He casually scrolled through the system shop interface. After yesterday's events, Luffy had briefly chatted with Vincent, the Vice Admiral, under the guise of a bounty hunter. Vincent had vowed to continue his pursuit, heading into the New World to personally eliminate the Reaper pirates. Out of basic decency, Luffy gave him a few words of moral encouragement before they went their separate ways. As they parted, a Marine soldier snapped a photo of Luffy and Vincent together, saying it would appear in the February 15th issue of World Economic Journal. Luffy had never been the type to read newspapers, let alone a free internal publication that circulated only within the Marine. Coincidentally, after he returned home, Robin told him Trabol had called, asking about his progress. Luffy had no clue what progress Trabol meant, so he just mentioned the newspaper offhand to brush him off. The result? Doflamingo completely misinterpreted Luffy's offhand comment, elevating him to a peer, analyzing the world stage from the same level of insight. Still, credit where credit's due, Doffy's instincts were razor sharp. While his logic may have been off, the conclusions he drew turned out to be completely accurate. A month later, news shook the world. The Beast's pirates, led by Kaido, had gone to war with the Red Hair pirates. Marine headquarters, Marineford. In a small war room, all officers at the rank of general or above had gathered. Standing at the front, Fleet Admiral Sengoku slammed a stack of reports on the table. His tone was grim. "Suru, give us a brief analysis. What does this clash between two emperors mean for the New World?" The room stirred slightly as all eyes turned to the white-haired woman seated beside Sengoku, Vice Admiral Suru. She sighed softly. "Two emperors clashing, although our intelligence didn't capture the entire battle, based on what we have, it seems that the newly crowned Red Hair Shanks managed to claim a narrow victory. Two islands within Kaido's territory have vanished, presumably destroyed during the fighting. With Shanks victorious, it's unlikely Whitebeard or Big Mom will make any further moves for now. From this point on, red-haired Shanks is undeniably the true fourth emperor of the sea. The New World will probably enter a brief period of peace, however dark that peace may be. Which also means, it's slipping even further from our control." The room fell into silence as everyone contemplated her words. Suru's analysis painted a grim picture. The Marine's position was weakening. The New World, the second half of the Grand Line, was the stage where the world's most powerful gathered. It wasn't just where the emperors recruited their forces, it was also the key to the Marine finding new talents. Letting the New World slip out of their grasp was not something they could afford. Sengoku tapped the table with one finger, breaking the silence. "Suru, what do you think we should do next?" She laced her fingers together and rested her chin on her hands, her signature posture when thinking deeply. "Do you remember the plan we had to abandon halfway? The one we shelved when Red Hair's rise diverted our attention?" Sengoku's eyes flashed. After a moment, he nodded. "You mean, the Seven Warlords plan? The Shichibukai plan, one of Sengoku's pet projects since his days as an admiral. It was designed to weaken powerful pirate groups by co-opting them. In essence, pirates would become government-sanctioned hunters of other pirates, tools the Marine could wield as needed. They'd use the power of these infamous pirates to establish footholds in the New World, thus undercutting the influence of the four emperors. And if needed, the Shichibukai could serve as auxiliary troops. Unfortunately, most pirates despised the Marine on principle. Aside from a few who'd already been recruited, many positions remained unfilled. After that, every senior officer at the table took turns sharing their vision and suggestions for implementing the plan. Finally, Sengoku brought the meeting to a close. "Good. Our next priority is to find the right candidates for the Seven Warlords of the Sea. Thank you all." The meeting was adjourned. Garp rubbed his eyes, yawned, and muttered, "Finally. Time to head home and get some real sleep." The meeting concluded, and the attendees began filing out of the room. "Fleet Admiral Sengoku," a Marine Vice Admiral suddenly called out. Sengoku turned around, curious. "Yes. What is it?" The rest paused, turning their heads as well. The Vice Admiral lowered his head, voice choked with emotion. After hesitating, he finally asked, "Is it true, about Vincent?" Hearing the question, Sengoku slowly removed his glasses and held them in his hand. His fingers trembled slightly, and a complex emotion flickered in his eyes. He replied quietly, "Yes. It's all in the report." Shutting down any trace of personal sentiment, Sengoku turned and walked away without another word. The vice admiral remained rooted in place, staring at the floor. The others silently departed, offering neither comfort nor conversation. Some had grown numb to such losses. Others simply didn't care. And a few, like him, buried their grief deep, letting their actions speak louder than sorrow. This vice admiral had faced countless battles. Even when a pirate's blade tore across his chest, he hadn't flinched. But now, tears fell from his eyes. He clenched his fists, shook his head to clear it, wiped away the tears, and left the room with a gaze more resolute than ever. On the table, someone had forgotten to take a classified intel document. At the bottom was a single, chilling line. Marine Headquarters Captain Vincent perished in the New World while pursuing the Reaper pirates. Fell into a trap. Recommend increasing the bounty on Reaper George. Alert all allied personnel. The sea breeze swept through the room, carrying away the last wisps of grief. Outside Marineford, countless warships lay docked. Massive cannons lined the fortress walls. In this era, Marines sacrificed their lives endlessly for peace on the seas. Some were wounded, some maimed, some bled, and wept. They were the real heroes. But heroes are often forgotten. Still, the departments at Marine Headquarters ran as usual. Officers boarded their ships, venturing out into the deep, unforgiving ocean. Sabayati Archipelago, Marine Subdivision Base. In a small office, Luffy and Robin lounged on a sofa, sipping tea and chatting idly. Before long, the door opened. A Marine entered, carrying a black briefcase. With a respectful bow, he placed it on the coffee table in front of Luffy. "Luffy-sama, this is your bounty reward. Please inspect it." "Haha, no need, Luffy chuckled casually. He grabbed the case but suddenly shifted tone, grumbling, "But seriously, you guys are so slow. It's been nearly a month, and this is just the first payout." The Marine quickly apologized. He certainly didn't want to offend this powerful man. "Truly sorry, Luffy-sama. Each bounty needs verification, and the cash must be withdrawn from HQ. There are a lot of bureaucratic steps. But next time, we won't keep you waiting so long. Alright then, if there's nothing else, we'll be heading off." Luffy walked out of the Marine base, carrying his 100 million berries reward in the black case. Back at the cozy little house he shared with Robin, he opened the case and took out 20 million, handing it to her. "Robin, can you run an errand for me? Go and grab the latest bounty list. Also," he lowered his voice, speaking gently, "if possible, try to find out anything about the celestial dragons." Robin's pupils contracted, but she nodded. "Understood." After she left, Luffy was finally alone. "System, how much gold do I have now?" he asked eagerly. "Current balance, 1,536,480 gold coins." Luffy blinked. He could hardly believe it. Had he really gotten this rich without realizing? Staring at the golden numbers projected onto his retina, he almost didn't dare blink, fearing they'd vanish. But gold, he knew, was only useful if converted into strength. System, he thought, exchange for one evolution gem. With over 1.5 million gold on hand, Luffy could afford to evolve the X-gloves twice. Still, he wanted to test the result of one evolution first. Ding! Purchase successful. The evolution gem has been placed in your inventory. A third of his gold vanished instantly. Just moments ago he'd felt wealthy, clearly, that was a fleeting illusion. Money burns fast, Luffy muttered. He opened his inventory and mentally summoned the evolution gem. A small, pink crystal appeared in his hand. Luffy examined it closely. Aside from being pretty, it didn't look much different from a regular diamond. System, how do I use this? Simply place the gem with the item you wish to evolve, then open the equipment interface and select Evolve. So I have to use the menu. Got it. He removed the black gauntlets from his hands, which immediately reverted into simple white gloves. Laying the gloves beside the gem, he opened the equipment interface. As expected, the X gloves now had an Evolve option. He willed it into action. The evolution gem lit up with a dazzling white glow, a holy radiance like something out of a divine revelation, enveloping the gloves completely. The light lasted for over 5 seconds, filling the entire room. Strangely, it didn't cause Luffy any discomfort. In fact, he could see the transformation clearly as it unfolded before his eyes. The cotton gloves shifted back into gauntlet form. The outer shell began to crack under some mysterious power, breaking apart to reveal a new design. Where once only the fingertips gleamed silver, now all 10 fingers shone with that same metallic brilliance. The signature, X, on the back shattered, then reformed, reborn in the center is a sky blue circular gem, clear and serene like the open sky. Within the gem, a faint, blurry pattern emerged. Luffy could swear he saw the silhouettes of Zoro, Nami, and Robin. Ding! Upgrade complete. Please review your new equipment. Luffy picked up the upgraded gloves. The moment he slipped them on, power surged up his arms and settled into his heart. An uncanny calm washed over him, even dulling his excitement over the transformation. X Gloves Veer, V.R. Origin, Reborn, Universe. Evolved from the original X Gloves. Now capable of emitting sky flame at 1.5x mental strength. Also capable of releasing lightning flame at stamina mental 2, extremely explosive, hard to control, and consumes massive stamina, 500 stamina per full power burst. Through training, the wearer can unlock 0-point breakthrough, first edition, a technique that converts the flame into super compressed negative energy, producing dying will ice. This ice can only be melted by high-level mental power energy. Stamina and mental strength multiplied by 2. And 0-point breakthrough. Luffy's eyes went wide, staring at the newly upgraded X Gloves Veer, V.R., unable to believe what he was seeing. In that moment, it felt like he stood at the very pinnacle of the world. Invincible is such a lonely thing to be. System. Open the status panel. Understood. Status panel activated. A stream of data appeared, projected onto Luffy's retinas. Character: Monkey D. Luffy. Level: 26. Express: 12,138 60,000ths. HP: 15,115,100ths. Stamina: 1,510. Strength: 1,097. Agility: 1,079. Mental power: 1,400. Luffy swung his fist, his eyes sparkling with excitement. He hadn't even realized how strong he'd become. From what he could tell, pirates with 100 million berries bounties generally had average stats, excluding mental power, around 500. Those at the 300 million level were usually over 800 across the board, and 500 million berries pirates had attributes exceeding 1,000. Beyond that point, even a minor increase in bounty represented a significant jump in power, hundreds of attribute points at a time. By Luffy's estimate, Treybol's average attributes must be above 1,500, while Doflamingo's were probably in the 3,000 to 4,000 range, mental power included. Luffy glanced at his newly evolved weapon, clicked his tongue, and smiled confidently. I still have a long way to go. There were fewer than 6 years left until the main storyline began. He was only 11 years old now, yet with full use of armament haki, his strongest strike could dish out around 5,500 damage. Even if his grandpa Garp stood in his way, he'd probably be forced to admit, ouch, that hurt. After a punch like that. Ha ha ha. Let's test this new ability. Boom. On Grove 14 of the Sabayati archipelago, a sudden explosion rocked a house, reducing it to ashes. Residents looked up toward the blast, seeing only flames and smoke billowing into the sky. Fortunately, the house had been isolated, Shaki's place, so no one was hurt. Probably. Cough, cough, cough. From the smoldering debris, a figure slowly crawled out. Luffy emerged, hair blown into a comical afro, his face and clothes covered in soot and ash. He stood on what used to be his cozy little home, his expression vacant. For a moment, he seemed completely lost. After a beat, Luffy raised one hand again. Boom! Another thunderous roar echoed out. 20 meters away, Luffy slammed into the ground from high above, but with his strong reflexes, he landed on his feet. The already destroyed house was now completely gone, not even a scrap of rubble remained. Just a scorched crater, and the faint smell of burnt wood. Luffy stared in disbelief at the new X Gloves Veer, V.R. on his hand. With no prior experience, his first attempt had used only a tenth of his strength, and that alone had obliterated the entire house. The second try, he'd held back even more, and still ended up launched 20 meters into the air. Looks like this lightning flame is way stronger than I imagined, Luffy muttered, a bit stunned. He glanced around at the empty clearing where their house used to be. His face crumpled in distress. The power's amazing, but it's just so hard to control. He suddenly remembered the 2 potted plants Robin had bought yesterday with such joy. She'd placed them by the entrance, saying they made the house feel like a real home. And now, it was all gone. How was he supposed to explain this to Robin? He imagined her coming home, hopeful and smiling, only to find total ruin. She might actually cry. No, I can't let Robin come home today. I have to stall at least until tomorrow. Luffy muttered to himself, hatching a plan. That's it. We'll go out and play for the whole day. Then tomorrow, I'll sneak off and buy a new house. That way she won't. He suddenly froze. Buy a house. His eyes widened. My money. Luffy dove headfirst into the crater, frantically searching. But aside from broken wood and charred debris, there was no sign of the black case, or the belly inside it. As the saying goes, misfortunes never come alone. Murphy's Law states, the more you worry about something happening, the more likely it is to happen. Luffy. Just as he was despairing, a sweet, lively voice called from the distance. Robin's bright figure emerged from the trees, running toward him with a cheerful smile. But as she approached and saw the devastation behind him, her pace slowed, then stopped altogether. Momentum carried her a few more steps forward, before she stood frozen in disbelief. Her eyes immediately filled with concern as she rushed toward Luffy. Robin, Luffy started to explain, but she cut him off before he could finish. Are you okay? Were you attacked by pirates? Are you hurt anywhere? Robin asked anxiously, brushing soot from his face and smoothing down his wild hair. Seeing him like this made her heart ache. Inwardly, she cursed herself, damn it. Something this serious happened to Luffy, and I wasn't there for him. The enemy must have been incredibly strong. Guilt crept across her face. Luffy only grew more awkward. Once his hair had been patted back to normal, he finally said in a small voice, Robin, actually, the house was my fault. Still lost in her own thoughts, Robin didn't register his words. Luffy continued, head bowed even lower. I was trying out a new move today, but I messed up the power control a bit, and, it kind of exploded. By the end, he was mumbling, barely able to look her in the eyes. Thankfully, Robin was calm and understanding. Despite her sadness at the loss of their home, she didn't let it show. Instead, she said softly, as long as you're okay. Just be careful next time, alright? You're strong, but if you lose control and hurt yourself, that'd be even worse. Luffy waved his hands frantically. No, I've already got a better handle on it now. Seeing that Robin wasn't angry, Luffy felt like he'd dodged a bullet. Robin is seriously the kindest. Feeling relieved, and a bit like a kid eager to show off a new toy, Luffy couldn't hold back any longer. He raised his right fist to his chest, revealing the newly evolved X gloves. Flashing a bright smile, he said, this new move is super strong. Once I master it, I swear, no one on this sea will ever be able to bully you again. Though he grinned like an excited child, Robin couldn't help but believe him. Watch this, Luffy said, brimming with pride. He pointed his finger like a gun at a nearby ancient tree. Flame bullet. A small bead of steel-colored fire gathered at his fingertip. Luffy carefully held back his strength, trying to keep the output minimal. Whoosh! The flame shot out like a bullet, hissing through the air with a deep roar. Even with such low power, the recoil from the lightning flame still knocked Luffy back 2 steps. His aim was off, the flame hit the ground in front of the tree. Still, the explosion was impressive. Flames burst upward. Dirt flew into the air. A wave of heat rolled out like a tsunami. Luffy quickly used a lightning flame to create a fire shield in front of him, blocking the debris. Once the dust settled, he scratched his head and laughed sheepishly. Yeah, that's how the house blew up. So, what brings you here this time? Shaki lit a cigarette and sat across from Luffy and Robin, resting her chin on one hand as she asked. Luffy scratched his head, looking a little embarrassed. Shaki-san, we're leaving the Sabayati archipelago today. Oh. Shaki raised an eyebrow, visibly surprised. She had assumed they'd be staying on the island for a while. After all, they'd just bought furniture and rented a place. Their sudden departure caught her off guard. There's been a change of plans, Luffy explained. Something came up, and now I really need a quiet place to train and settle myself. Originally, Luffy had planned to remain on the archipelago as a bounty hunter, earning gold, building his reputation. If the chance arose, he even considered taking out a celestial dragon or two. Sure, that would plunge the island into chaos, but that didn't particularly bother him. Unfortunately, plans couldn't keep up with change. The marine sweep operation had wiped out all the big-name pirates on Sabayati. The few who escaped were soon captured and likely now rotting in Impel Down. For at least a year or two, the number of pirates entering the New World would drop significantly. While Luffy did manage to cash in big, collecting a good haul of gold, the island had gone quiet. Most pirates were now lying low, unwilling to set foot on Sabayati. For the past month, Luffy had made no progress at all. And then there was the matter of his new gear, the X-Glove VR. The Sky Flame it unleashed was far more powerful than anticipated, but also wildly unpredictable. Luffy realized that while system items were undeniably strong, true mastery still took time and effort. The Dying Will Flame he'd first acquired had been mild and easy to control. But the newly evolved Storm Flame had thrown him off entirely. Its explosive force made it impossible to use in actual combat for now. He hadn't even dared try the Dying Will 0-point breakthrough, first edition. Luffy had long known how powerful that technique was. He thought he'd need to unlock it on his own, but the glove gave him a shortcut. The Dying Will Flame was the manifestation of a person's inner resolve. Whether it was the Dying Will Flame, the Storm Flame, or even the Sky Flame that Robin used, they were all forms of energy ignited by conviction and determination. The 0-point breakthrough, first edition, worked by suppressing that flame to its lowest point, releasing a cold flame forged from clarity of mind. It manifested as ice, the opposite of fire. Though this ice couldn't match Admiral Aokiji's devil fruit in raw power, it couldn't freeze an entire ocean. It had a unique trait. Because it was formed from pure resolve, ordinary fire couldn't melt it. Anyone frozen by it had to rely on their own willpower to thaw out. It might take minutes, or years. It all depended on the strength of their mental power. It was the ultimate dueling technique. Unfortunately, Luffy couldn't even control the Storm Flame yet, let alone master a technique that required even greater precision. Still, the upgraded glove had already taught him the hardest part, how to control his inner self. The rest would come with time. Shaki tapped the ash from her cigarette and sighed. Youth really is a blessing, to be able to just leave on a whim. That kind of freedom. Her smile faded into something distant, her gaze unfocused, like a tree in winter stripped of all its leaves, a quiet melancholy hung in the air. So much time had passed. So much that she no longer dared count the years on her fingers. Exhaling one last breath of smoke, she asked, "So, are you heading to the New World? I can have Rayleigh coat your ship, I'll even give you a discount this time." Pulling herself out of old memories, Shaki returned to her usual self, offering one last gesture of help to the young pair. But Luffy looked awkward. Actually, no. We're not heading to the New World. Not yet. He hesitated, debating whether to confess what happened to the house they rented. After all, they'd only stayed a few weeks before blowing it up. But if he told Shaki the truth, she might beat him to a pulp. The 4 Seas. Shaki raised an eyebrow in confusion. It's not easy to head back that way. How do you plan to cross the calm belt? Luffy scratched the back of his head and gave a sheepish laugh. Haven't figured that out yet. We'll take it one step at a time. He glanced at the clock on the wall. It's getting late, Shaki-san. Robin and I need to stock up, we're heading out today. So soon? Shaki sounded surprised. She didn't understand why Luffy was in such a rush. Yeah, time waits for no one, Luffy said vaguely. He stood up, patted Robin on the shoulder, signaling it was time to go. Robin, slightly flushed and bashful, looked down as she followed him. Shaki gave them a curious look, wondering what secret they were hiding. At the bar's entrance, Luffy suddenly turned around, as if remembering something. Oh right, Shaki-san, about the house. I accidentally blew it up. Just sell it to me, okay? I'll pay you next time we come back. Shaki leaned on her hand, watching them with a faint smile. They reminded her of her younger days. Lost in memories, she replied casually, don't worry about it. Rayleigh's a renovation expert, he'll fix it. Really? Then I'll leave it to Uncle Rayleigh. See you next time, Shaki-san. Luffy called as he walked away without turning back. Safe travels, then. Shaki watched the two young figures disappear down the road and chuckled. What a whirlwind pair. Out on the street, Robin asked quietly, was it really okay not to tell Shaki-san the truth? Luffy, still feeling nervous, replied, it's fine, it's fine. Uncle Rayleigh won't mind, ha 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 ha. Truthfully, he was just terrified of Shaki's fists. And come on, it was only one house. Surely that wasn't a big deal for someone like Rayleigh. He'd just make it up to them later. A few days later, Rayleigh stood at the edge of a crater, his face blank. Quote, where's my house? Note, for those unfamiliar, the flames in this story are based on Katekyo Hitman Reborn. Dying will flames. Each flame has a unique attribute. Sky, harmony, balances and unifies other flames. Storm, disintegration, breaks down and destroys matter. Rain, tranquility, slows and weakens opposing flames. Sun, activation, boosts healing and physical energy. Cloud, propagation, expands and multiplies on its own. Mist, illusion, creates illusions and false constructs. Lightning, hardening, solidifies into shields or armor. God 1. The calm surface of the sea suddenly burst into white spray. Mischievous splashes of water sprayed into the air, scattering into thousands of droplets. Under the dazzling sunlight, they shimmered like fish scales blanketing the ocean, leaping around like playful children. A large dark shape slowly emerged from beneath the surface. The shadow thrashed wildly, sending even bigger waves crashing outward. Luffy gripped the fishing rod tightly with both hands, grinning from ear to ear. The rod bent into a perfect arc, creating a bridge of tension between two battling forces. The dark shape was clearly losing the struggle. No matter how fiercely it fought, it couldn't resist being pulled closer and closer to the surface. You're it. Today's lunch, Luffy shouted, placing one foot on the ship's railing and yanking upward with all his strength. His flexible body snapped back like a whip. Splash! A massive figure burst from the water, momentarily blocking out the sun. It flew right over Luffy's head and crashed onto the deck, flailing wildly and spraying water everywhere. Off to the side, Robin, lounging on a deck chair, casually waved her hand. Instantly, several pale arms sprouted from the deck, linking together and pinning the struggling sea creature in place, leaving it no room to move. Ding! Congratulations! Your companion has slain a small sea king. You've earned 856 express. Under the blazing sun, the sea creature soon stopped struggling. Its life drained away, leaving behind only fresh ingredients for the next meal. Robin, I'm hungry. Luffy collapsed on top of the Sea King's carcass, giving her a pitiful look as if to say, if you don't cook now, I'll eat it raw. Robin closed her book with a sigh and smiled. All right, I'll go. She waved her hand again, and 2 rows of arms appeared to carry the Sea King into the kitchen as she walked in. The ship sailed calmly across the sea. Luffy plopped down onto the sun chair Robin had just vacated. This is life, he muttered, waiting for lunch to be served. Just as Luffy was about to doze off. Luffy! Robin's voice rang out from the cabin. He bolted upright and rushed inside. What happened? Robin! Inside the kitchen, Robin was wearing a cute apron embroidered with cartoon patterns. Her curvy figure filled it out perfectly, stirring all kinds of thoughts, though that impression was quickly ruined by the blood-stained kitchen knife in her hand. What's going on? Luffy asked as he stepped closer. Robin pointed toward the Sea King's dissected body. Luffy followed her gaze. Inside the creature's belly was a weathered wooden barrel. Alongside it were a broken stick and a strange strip of cloth with large characters that read, "Sacred offering to the sea god." For some reason, the sight of the barrel stirred a familiar feeling in Luffy, though he couldn't quite place where he had seen it before. They hauled the barrel out and gathered around it curiously. Luffy walked in a circle around the barrel, trying to recall something. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Robin, have you heard of a terrifying legend on these seas? Robin responded softly, intrigued, encouraging Luffy to continue. They say there's a sea so cursed that anything entering it disappears without a trace, the Enchanted Triangle Zone. A gleam of excitement lit Luffy's eyes, like a child discovering something thrilling. Robin's smile faded slightly. I've heard of that place. Thousands of ships have vanished in that area, none ever returned. Luffy shook his head. Not that sea. I mean this one. What? Robin's face darkened immediately. In all the tales she had read, no one had ever made it back from the Enchanted Triangle. Luffy patted the barrel lid. Well, not exactly. But I think we're close. Let's sail around a bit more. If the legend is real, the zone should be nearby. Robin looked worried and was about to speak, but then paused. With a soft smile, she said, Aye, Captain. Luffy nodded. Then, abruptly, I'm hungry again, Robin. After lunch, Luffy and Robin took turns navigating, steering the ship in slow circles around the area. Luffy brought the barrel up on deck and yanked the lid open with a forceful motion. Tweet, boom. Something shot into the air like a firework and exploded with a loud bang. The sky was instantly dyed red. The blinding flare outshone the sun, washing everything below in crimson light. Half a minute later, the red slowly faded, and the sky returned to its normal hue. The sea was calm, as if nothing had happened. A signal flare, Robin guessed, her keen intellect quick to connect the dots. Exactly. And I bet whoever dropped this barrel isn't a friendly type. We've been marked, Luffy said with a grin. Then he turned to Robin's slender arms and added, speaking of which, Robin, you should probably start training more. Robin was still thinking about the flare when Luffy's comment caught her off guard. But these days, she took everything he said seriously. She looked him in the eye, clearly waiting for more. It might be a little early for you, Luffy said, lifting his arm, but it's good to start learning. You've probably noticed in my fights that I sometimes turn parts of my body black and hardened, he continued. To demonstrate, he wrapped his entire arm in haki. This is armament haki. Every powerful fighter in the New World uses it. It boosts your defense, increases your power, and lets you hit logia users. Robin gently touched his arm, tracing along its hardened surface. For some reason, Luffy felt like he was being taken advantage of. Seeing his awkward expression, Robin chuckled. Hee, I know. You taught that to Godia the other day, I overheard everything. Luffy's face twitched. What about observation and conqueror's haki? I know those too, she said with a sweet, playful smile that made her look like a love-struck teenager who had just pulled off a prank, fitting, because that's exactly what she was. Fine. Luffy had hoped to enjoy playing teacher a bit more, but apparently Robin had been eavesdropping. Wait a minute, if she was spying on him, then what about when he was taking a bath? Oh no. Damn it. Luffy's face shifted like the unpredictable weather of the Grand Line. Noticing she might have said too much, Robin quickly changed the subject. Luffy, have you noticed? The fog around us, it's getting thicker.